soldiers left, and they were just staying because they had another week. They wanted to quit early. They had one more week and we get paid. And so they said, well, how many of you can stand? Only 2,400 of them could stand.
Wow.
And they said, all right, we got to do something. We got to have a victory. George Washington had written a letter to his cousin down at Mount Vernon. He said, I think we might be home soon. He said, quote, I fear this thing is about up.
Wow.
Benjamin Rush came down and prayed with him. They decided that they needed a victory of some sort. And Benjamin Rush came back and said, well, let's have a theme that is victory or death. This has to work. And so on December 24th, a fellow by the name of Thomas Paine wrote an article and said, you know, this is a critical time. Let me just read an opening paragraph. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands with it now deserves the love and thanks of men and women. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheaply, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods. It would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. And as George Washington had that read to the 2,400 that are able to stand and march, he said, this is it. The hope of mankind rests on your shoulders. At that time, a third of the people in the country wanted them beat. They were on the other team. A third of them didn't care. Surprise. And then there were a third that were on their side, but they had nothing. Little girls would come along and sell sandwiches to the soldiers that are freezing on the ground there and report back to the British their condition. And then on that New Year's Eve, on that Christmas Eve, Washington said, here's what we're going to do. Now remember this picture, as long as you live, you've seen it everywhere. It is the day that America was born. Because he said, what we're going to do is, we're going to go down to this river, cross the Delaware, and go down to Trenton, New Jersey, where there are a bunch of German Hessians that are hired, and they have all kinds of ammunition, all kinds of guns, and all kinds of food, blankets, everything that we don't have. And so we're going to go down and capture them. And if we're going to go here early at night, and we're going to attack at dawn. And then he said this, and the whole purpose of the story. George Washington said this: post none but Americans on guard tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Said, wait. They've all got birth certificates. I mean, they've got the uniform of the country. No. Being an American is not physical. A birth certificate, a passport doesn't make you an American. George Washington said that being an American was spiritual. It's what you believe in, what you stand in. Post none but the American on guard tonight. And so they began to march, and it was absolutely horrible. They were overwhelmed in this blizzard. They couldn't get across the river. They didn't get across until early the next morning. They were going to have to attack in broad daylight at dawn. And so they did. And in the battle, not a single soldier was lost to the Americans. 2 of them froze to death on the march because their shoes fell apart and they wrapped burlap around so you could follow them because of the blood in the snow. They were able to kill 29, to capture and to wound 88, and to capture over 900 soldiers. They were able to take all the supplies and things that they needed. God blessed them with a victory that swept through up and down the colonies. The next day, thousands of men in America was born because of a leader and God's blessing on a particular night. I want to tell you about those people that we now call Americans. 4% of the population of the world. They won the victory after a few years of having 13 individual countries, 13 individual states. It wasn't working real well. One person that they really admired was the commander of the troops. Right. And only George Washington had enough respect to invite them all back to the same room where they had written the Declaration some years before, where they said, we're going to be free, and they did. And so they tried to put together a government. But 50% of the people lived in 3 states. 50% of the people lived in 10 states. The 10 states were going to be ruled by the 3 and vice versa. And a handful of states wanted to phase out slavery. Now, during this effort of 1787, they hadn't paid the soldiers that I was telling you about. And so what they did was they took a land north of the Ohio River called the Northwest Territory, and they made grants to people, to these soldiers. One of them in Clinton County, Ohio, where I represented, was a fellow by the name of Fife. And to this day, D.M. Fife is the county commissioner, and Bill Fife is the county engineer. And one of them was to a Carey, C-A-R-E-Y. Rita Carey is the editor of the Wilmington News Journal, and Ron Carey is the county prosecutor. And so they gave him this land, and in the process of doing that, they passed unanimously these words: "There shall be no slavery in the Northwest Territory." Well, these folks said, "Oh, I can see what this is going to do. I can see this is coming. We're going to have to sell these people on the idea of doing away with their local government, trying to join in with those people in Massachusetts and elsewhere. But then the next day, they're also going to be out of business." And so it began to fall apart. And George Mason, George Washington's next door neighbor and best friend, who got in his carriage and started to leave. George Washington walked along the side of the carriage trying to get in the state and said, "This chance might not come again." And Mason said, "George, I got other things to do, sit around and talk about politics all summer." He said, but nevertheless, they were able to corral them, to get them all back in there one more time. And a fella that was one of the 4 people in the room that had signed the Declaration in the same room 11 years earlier, a fellow by the name of Benjamin Franklin, a man who had financed a revival in Philadelphia that swept up and down the nation in what is called the First Great Awakening. And he said these words. He asked to speak for the first time. The room got very silent. He said, and by the way, this is an excerpt of it, if you want to see the whole thing, June 28, 1787. I'm going to read the speech. It says, "Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, we're going to," well, what it should say is, I'm going to give you the first sentence. That is, "Mr. President, I have lived a long time. And the more that I have lived, the more I have discovered that God deals in the affairs of men. We have gone back to ancient history for models of government and examined the differences in forms which we now no longer exist." He said, we, in the time that we were in conflict with Great Britain, we had daily prayer in this room. Right. Our prayers were heard, and they were graciously answered. And then he said, we viewed the modern states all around Europe, finding none of their constitutions suitable for our circumstances. We, in this situation, groping in the dark to find political truth, we have not once thought of humbly applying to the Father lights for our understanding. In other words, we've been crawling around here in the dark. Nobody's bothered to go turn on the light. He said that in the beginning of the contest with Great Britain, we had daily prayer in this room for divine protection. Our prayers were heard, and they were graciously answered." Now listen to this next sentence. This is 200 years later. This is 11 years later. And he said, "Have we now forgotten this powerful friend? Or do we imagine that we no longer need his assistance? Sir, I've lived a long time. The longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. If a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire could rise without his aid?" He said, "We have been assured in the sacred writings that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it." Well, I believe this, that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. Therefore, I move that prayers, imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessings on our deliberations, be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed to business. So they moved that they would begin to pray. Now, why did they do that? See, wisdom is the proper use of knowledge. Knowledge is good, but wisdom is the proper. You can teach a 12-year-old how to drive. The reason you don't throw your keys to a 12-year-old, he lacks the proper use of knowledge. Where does wisdom come from? 2 sources. One comes from experience, your own or someone else's. That's why Churchill said, in order to learn about government, you must study history, study history, study history, for in it you will find all the secrets of statecraft. And so Franklin says, we've looked at everything and it didn't work. Where else is a source of wisdom? Scripture says, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men liberally and upbraideth not. In other words, there's 2 sources. So when you haven't listened to your parents, and you haven't listened to history, and you haven't read biographies, and now it's not where God is available at all times, and there's no place else to go. He said, we've looked everywhere. And And so they recessed. He said, let us recess for 3 days of fasting and prayer, and let us see what God might do. And so that weekend they met on their knees, met the following morning for a brief little prayer of 3.5 hours, and in a matter of 5 weeks, they wrote the Constitution of the United States of America, creating the oldest government on the planet. Every government on earth has changed repeatedly since that time. But that little, and it wasn't that long ago. Lance and I were talking. I'm 70 times 3, that's 210. That's a third of the history of the United States. This is a brief little, sharp little country that we have. And what has it done? It has blessed the world as no nation has ever. 4% of the population of the world call themselves American. Every year, they write more books, more plays, more symphonies, more copyrights, more inventions than the rest of the world combined. For thousands of years, people hoped to someday fly. It was Americans that invented the airplane, and the light bulb, and the telegraph, and the telephone. Put men on the moon. Men on the moon. If any other nation could do that, and they can, if they could think of a nation on earth that would send men to the moon, and as they circled the moon would read that in the beginning it was God that created the heavens and the earth for the entire world to listen. And then as they land on the moon, would take communion in recognition of Christ shedding his blood for all mankind. Let me just tell you this. There is no country like this. America's not under attack because it's evil. America's under attack because it's good. America is the standard for righteousness in the world. When a ship is attacked on the high seas, as happened over 300 times last year, to whom can they appeal? The 237,000 Americans who wear the uniform of the United States Navy. Without that, no ship would be safe. You saw what the British ruled the world for 250 years. They ruled Britannia, ruled the waves. 6 weeks ago, they're in the Straits of Hormuz. The Iranians capture their ship. The very next day, the foreign minister comes back. We have no military response. No, don't worry. No, we're going to say pretty please. Well, only the United States of America can protect them and the rest of the world. Scripture says, if you take a city, you must bind a strong man. There's only one strong man in the world. It's the United States. You take America down, the rest of us a piece of cake. That's why they call America the great Satan. They call Israel the little Satan, because America stands for righteousness in the world. There's a ship going into the harbor at this moment in Hong Kong using a global positioning system conceived, invented, and maintained by Americans. There's a Mercedes dealer in Buenos Aires ordering a part from Frankfurt using an internet conceived, invented, and maintained by Americans. A little girl in Warsaw loses her puppy dog. She's got a collar with a little chip on it. She goes on her iPhone, on the internet, on the GPS, finds exactly where her puppy dog is. All of it conceived, invented, and maintained by Americans. No nation has blessed the world as this nation has. When a tsunami hits the largest Muslim nation on earth, to whom do they appeal? All those rich folks in Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Iran? No, they go to the Christians in America. This is the nation that helps everybody as no nation ever has. Never in the history of mankind has a nation had the capacity to overrun another nation, but what it didn't do it.
Right.
The only times there's been peace is when there's a balance of power, and they're always testing it at all times. Hitler tested it in the Rhine.
Sudetenland, right?
He wasn't allowed to go in there. He said, let us see what they did, and they didn't do anything. And Argentina said, I want to take the Falkland Islands from British in 1982, and they went over and did it. The poor Brits had so destroyed their navy that it took 6 weeks to train them to go down there in the United States. Ronald Reagan gave them an exocet missile to help them defend themselves against the ship. The Navy in Britain is now half as large as it was then. Without America, everything that we believe in is stand on. That's why I did 6 presidential prayer breakfasts in 2016 in 6 different countries. And in each one, when they got up to pray, the diplomatic corps and the parliaments and all the other folks they would all pray for the country, and
United States.
They would pray for the leadership of the United States of America.
Yep.
Because they knew there's nothing they could do. If you and I failed in our responsibility, they knew how helpless they would be. And quite frankly, Jesus was very, very good to us. He decided He decided to insert himself. And anybody that thinks that it was the organization that got it done, like when you're running for office, you have what's called a surrogate program. You have people that you know that are your friends. If you're going to ride a parade in the county, you know who the most popular person is, whether it be the mayor or the sheriff or whoever. It wasn't the great surrogate program that got Donald Trump reelected. Nobody would come within 500 miles of where when he landed in a state, the Republican governor leave the state. So explain why he didn't have to. I could go on and on and on. one
Exactly.
and did a blessing for the entire, and the world is a different place. Which I mean,
Come on.
that's where I'll be in about 15 more minutes when I do the wrap up. I get ahead of myself. Let's go here. So, once that was established, it requires two parts. America works, as John Adams said, the Constitution was made for a moral and a religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. How do we know that? Well, there were some slaves that left America, and they took the American Constitution. They went to a place, they named it after Liberty, they called it Liberia. They named it after the capital after the president, President Monroe. They called it Monrovia. And they used our Constitution, but it's made for a moral and a religious. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And there's no freedom there. So the idea that you can exert God and country, it's not going to work. And the poor folks that destroyed the Boy Scouts by trying to do that found out that our country is based upon. But it's not original with us. Thomas Jefferson said, along with everybody else has said, in every argument of every kind, there's a certain primary truth or first principle upon which all subsequent reasoning, there has to be a starting point someplace. If you're going to build a house, somebody has to drive a stake. Then everything goes from there. And the stake has to stay put, by the way. If you move it 6 inches there while you're doing the second floor, the whole thing's going to fall apart. There has to be a starting point. And there's only two starting points, and that's what I want to talk about. Every barroom brawl, every schoolyard scuffle boils down to two words: who says? And there's only two answers. The answer is what I say or what God says. How do you feel about abortion? Well, I think, or what God says. And so Moses was dealing with those folks in the children of Israel, and he was trying to make all the decisions himself. It wore him out. So his father-in-law came to him and he said, God said that you need to have a state, federal, and local government. He said, you need to put people in charge of thousands, hundreds, and tens. And here's the people that you choose. Now, I can't give you a course in political science, and I'm not going to give you 4 years of instruction. Here's what you look for, Moses. Three things. For anybody who's going to be in a position of trust in your government, three things. Number one is those that fear God. Fear God means to respect or honor God. Like you fear the king, or you respect the king. So first of all, you've got to have somebody that fears God. Why is that? Because there are only two options. Either you believe man created God, or you believe that God created man. End of discussion. You go to the philosophy section of any bookstore or any library, you pull down by page 5, you can tell either you believe that man got here on his own. He just crawled up out of the primordial slime and said, let's write a symphony. Right? He got here all by himself, or you believe that God made man. That is the difference. And that is what made America different. That's why the European Union over there, that they waited for 7 years trying to approve their constitution because they had God in there. And France and all those other countries weren't going to sign anything having God, because God means that somebody else is in charge. We know everything. It's only universal. It's only man. Man saw that it was good for food and it was right to make one wise. It's a confrontation that you and I all make for ourselves. We have to decide if we're going to be God or he's going to be God. And what God said was that you needed, let's go back and make an observation about that. Let me just tell you that you don't want to marry a person who thinks they're God. Just as a little aside, it'll wear you out. You don't want to go into business with a person who thinks they're God. And you don't want to put a person in office who thinks they're God. So how does that work in actuality? Well, because this is what design. You can listen to a politician for 60 seconds and you can tell where they come. It works like this. If you believe that man created God, then you believe that man is his own standard. Like, if you believe that God created man, God has a standard. If you believe that man has his own standard, then you believe that man is basically good. By what standard would he not be good? If you recognize that God created man, we fall short. If man is basically good, then anything he does wrong is not his fault. He's good. poor fellow come here, shot those people up, and he's good. So whose fault is it? Well, it's got to be that gun's fault, coming in here doing those terrible things. My goodness, and you can listen to a politician and you can figure it out in just seconds as to how they feel. By the way, if guns kill people, how does anyone ever get out of a gun show alive? But nonetheless, they're never accountable. And so this football player that goes out there and bows down when they're raising the flag. And by the way, get my thoughts off here for 60 seconds and I'll get back on track. Why is the flag important? America doesn't have a coat of arms like Mexico got from France or got from Spain or someplace. American flag is the symbol that represents you and me. It represents America. And when you hate America, then you spit on our flag. Now don't be saying I'm doing this for global warming. No, you're not. If I have a picture of your mother, Mr. Football player, and I spit on your mother's picture. Oh, but I'm doing this for the cause of starving children in Libya. No, you're not. You chose my mother's picture to spit on. You chose the flag not because of some ethereal thing. It's because you despise America. And my brother's funeral was yesterday, and they took the flag and they folded it up and they presented it to his widow on behalf of the people, of the President of the United States, and a grateful nation. I present what? The symbol of America. That's what it is. And so it is in the process of this football player with 12 children by 9 women, the question would be, well, he's good. It can't be his fault. Well, it's government's fault. They didn't pass out enough condoms in the classroom or something. Nobody ever holds them accountable. Liberals are never accountable for what they've done. However, we know that we will be accountable for what we do. But here's the most important thing. The final thing is this. If there is no God, where do rights come from? They come from the tribe. They come from the tribe. People used to get offended if we said the tribe. College campuses today, everybody refers to themselves as a tribe. You're part of my tribe. I'm in her tribe. The fact is, their desire is to divide people out according to group. And they believe that rights come from the group. Let me tell you, they don't. Rights don't come from the group. Rights come from God. Now, if you think rights come from the group, that's called a democracy, by the way. In a democracy, rights come from the majority. Our daughter spent a year in Rwanda. 80% of the people in Rwanda are Hutu, 20% are Tutsi. 80% voted to kill the 20%. Over the course of 90 days with machetes, they chopped 1 million people to death. That's called a democracy. Rights come from the majority. In America, you can vote 95-5 to kill Jews. You can't do it. Why? Because our rights don't come from the majority. Our rights come from God. And that's why when Benjamin Franklin came out of the Independence Hall and the lady asked, tell us, Dr. Franklin, what kind of government do we? A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it, to the republic for which it stands. Because a republic constrains what a government can do. Under a democracy, you can have Nancy Pelosi walk to the well of the House and say, quote, today we are going to create a right to health care. Interesting. If you, Mrs. Pelosi, can create a right,
you could take a right.
That means you can also do away with a right. Mm-hmm. And there's a term for that, by the way. It's called tyranny. And the purpose of the United States Constitution was for one purpose. Just remember this. It was not meant to be efficient. So don't complain about why we have to streamline and take your rights away and do all that for efficiency. The American government was never designed for efficiency. It was designed for one purpose, to prevent tyranny. And our rights come from God. And anybody, this side over here, these folks over here, they don't want God. So they've taken it out of their Constitution. And then they just passed a resolution last week at the Democrat National Convention. A committee passed a resolution honoring humanism and inviting those folks in who are not. This is a spiritual battle.
It is.
And I think really everybody knows it. So how does this go about? Well, this side always wants larger government. These sides want limited government. Why? Because we want to protect our freedom. Every decision is made. You understand that. How do you get more government? More taxes. These people will always want more taxes. Always, always. Now they'll tell you, I'm opposed to taxes. But during this critical moment in the history of our town, and the circumstances currently that our school district is in, because of the library boards, they always have some excuse. I was on many a platform in 1992 with Bill Clinton when he was running for president the first time. You wake him up in the middle of the night. I'm for a tax cut for all working Americans. I want to increase taxes. I want a tax cut for every working American. I mean, you just walk up behind him, goosey, I'm for a tax cut for all working Americans. He said over and over until he got elected, and then in December, he doesn't take office till January. He couldn't wait 2 months. Came out there, you can Google it for all you young people who don't remember 100 years ago when he came in. He said he came out there and bit his lip. He was a professional at it. And, quote, I never worked on anything so hard in my life, but you'll never guess what I have to do. Support the largest tax increase in the history of mankind. Well, I could have told you that 10 years before. I can tell you about the candidate for governor on this side in your state 8 years from now, and I have no idea who any of them are, but I tell you, these people will always want more taxes. These people want fewer taxes. These people want a weak defense. These people want a strong defense. Now, I could go on with some link here, but this is always what gives Katie Curry heartburn. She said, you folks are claiming you always want a smaller government, and fewer, you always vote for a strong defense, and the answer to that is right. That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. Because a limited government protects our freedom. And fewer taxes preserves our freedom. And a strong defense protects our freedom. And that is what government is supposed to do. And then finally, if I am the standard, then I can say that marriage is between 3 men and a horse. And then, because I am the standard, I can make it a hate crime for you to do what you just did.
Right.
And that's not 10 years from now. That's currently. That's currently. You have no.
Yep.
If there is no standard, you can't tell me 3 women can't love each other. I got 3 women in my family who love each other. If you're going to determine that marriage has no godly principles or standard, then where is the standard? And these people, you tell me where a person stands on passing out condoms in the classroom, and I'll tell you within a 90% certainty where they stand on cutting the capital gains tax. And you say, well, that's kind of a little silly. No, it isn't. Once you understand how they think, you'll see it clear as a bell. And how does it work? So, you have to have those that fear God. Secondly, God said, I only have 3 things for you. Make sure he doesn't think he's the boss. Make sure he understands there's a godly standard. Number 2, a recognition of truth. Now, what is truth? I can say this room is 75 feet wide. You can say it's 65, you can say it's 85, you can say it's 100. We're all pleased as punch until somebody comes in and measures it. And when they measure it, that measurement is truth. Everything else is just opinion. And if I've said 3 times that I think the room is 75 feet wide, and they measure it and it's 65, everybody in this room knows that what I said was wrong. Because truth reveals error. And error hates truth. And so all of us that said it was 75 and 85 and 90, you can say anything you want. We're all together. That little girl that came in here and measured that thing, notice what I'm saying? It's the standard that matters. It doesn't matter who it is. It's the standard. And so they want to do away with the standard because the standard exposes error. More importantly than that, however, truth overcomes error. So, you're defending a fellow that arrested for stealing an ATM machine. And so, gets up in the courtroom, absolutely not. He loves his mother, and he helped his sister, and he was having dinner with her out in Portland, Oregon. Here's the receipts and go on. You don't care what she says, because when she's finished, you're going to show a security camera of where he drove his pickup truck up in front of the ATM machine, and he put a chain around it, and you see his face as he leans over the camera, and his fingerprints, and he pushes the button, and the truth will overcome the error. Therefore, her only hope is that she has to prevent the presentation of truth. Mm-hmm. So you have anybody on cottage cameras say the craziest, idiotic, most stupid things on the planet. Nobody cares. But you let a conservative come and get within 5 miles of the place. And they start having heart attacks and snowflakes and collapsing and breaking walls and then calling the police and coming. Why? Because truth overcomes error. Rush Limbaugh, one guy on the program for what? With commercials, 2 hours and 10 minutes a day. You got ABC, NBC, CBS, BBC, Reuters, ABC, and they're all screaming out, why? Because truth overcomes error. So that's why they want to shut them down. That's why you can go to an inaugural and you can pray in the name of Mother Earth. You can pray in the name of eagle feathers. And nobody cares. But you pray in the name of Jesus Christ. All hell breaks loose. Why? Because truth overcomes error.
Wow, come on. Come on.
Blind the standard. Try to build a house with your own truth. What does your ruler say? Well, my ruler tells me I'm 13 inches. Well, the other one, what is your? My ruler tells me I'm 15 inches. Well, my truth is only 10 inches. Okay, fine. Let's try building a house with your ruler and your ruler. You think you can't get any place. There has to be a standard. Man doesn't like a standard. He wants to be the standard. And our founder said, no. We're going to waste this thing upon God. But here's the final point. Now remember, God can only say 3 things. The third thing is,
I want to give him some more time. So who does that?
We used to have a wall, right? Never room. We didn't have to worry about people killing each other because from kindergarten on, it said, thou shalt not kill. My wife tells about a friend who was walking down the hall at high school with 2 rifles over his shoulder. And they're going by the principal's office. He said, John, where are you going with that? He said, Mr. So-and-so wanted to see my new 30-06. I want to show you. I said, well, good. When you're finished, come back. I'd like to see it too. Nobody ever thought about shooting anybody. Why? Because we always said, thou shalt not kill. Now, you do away with that, and you do what your truth and what makes you feel good. And then, I have never owned a bicycle lock in my life. Never. You come out of school, there are 200, 300 bicycles all around the school. None of them had lock. Why? Because it said, thou shalt not steal. You knew how it worked. It also said, thou shalt not covet. When you travel around, people in foreign countries like to come up, they've been to America, say, I've been to America. And my wife is an engaging sort, and she would say, well, is there anything about America that surprised you, or what was the most shocking thing about America? The answer that came back more than anything else was this. In America, you don't have walls around your property. You don't know where your yard stops and where your neighbors begin. Now, we didn't pay attention. We didn't know that was the case. But you stop and think about it. South of the Rio Grande, everybody in Mexico not only has walls around it, they have cut glass on the top. I was doing the prayer breakfast with the president of Costa Rica, went out to dinner with a very good friend of mine, the Attorney General for the country. We got to the restaurant, we're standing there talking, the girls went in and eat, and we're just talking. And I said, well, I agree, the food's a lot better inside. And I said, no, I know, Bob, we just met. We waited until quite some time, somebody materialized out of somewhere. He gave him some money, we went in to eat. What is that? He hired someone to watch his car while we were in the restaurant. Because coveting wants what someone else has. And God said, those are the last people you want. And let me just tell you, if somebody comes in this room and says, it's going to cost me $63,000 to go to school next year. And the worse the school, the more expensive it is, by the way. And so he walks around and says, I want $100 from you. He's got a gun. And I want $50 from you, I want $150 from you, I want $250 from you. And he collects his $63,000. We would call that person a thief. We would call him a criminal. Now suppose someone says, if you vote for me, I will have the Internal Revenue Service take $50 from here, $150 from here, and I'm going to give it to you. It is no more noble to hire someone to steal than it is to do it yourself. And God said you don't ever take a person who covets what someone else has. I grew up in a place called Hillsborough, in a place called Appalachia, which they now determined that was poor. And so in our little town, we had 3 Cadillacs in that town. They all 3 belonged to 3 separate funeral homes. And when they had a funeral, they would put the Cadillac out front. And I would ride my bicycle and sit up under the tree and say, someday, I'm going to have one of those. Because I'm an American. I'm going to dream. And I'm going to, that's what I'm going to. Never once did it ever cross my mind to go take it. I wasn't entitled to it. And so covetousness will destroy anything. And God says, you don't want to do it. So how does that work? How does one get money? Money, and what is it? Money is a representation of a contribution that I made to someone else. That is, if you walk into a shoe store and you say, "I want to wear shoes," they say,
Hey guys,
"Why have you never done to be entitled to have these shoes?"
there's my film crew back here. Well, look, I've been filming this thing all night, but I got to get up there and close out the meeting. This is a great guy, though. Bob McEwen, 6-time congressman and head of the Conservative Policy Council. Brilliant, great Christian. You're at the Trump Hotel, Washington, D.C. Extreme dream trip. Been a wonderful time. We'll make these videos available.
Hey, you know what? I'm Lance Wallnau, and I want to tell you something. I think that occasionally thumbs up and thumbs down really means something. I wasn't aware that there's a thumbs down option. I thought that was like diminishing to self-esteem on Facebook. But evidently, YouTube is being bold. So you can like me or not like me. But I'd prefer that you liked me and subscribed. So why don't you do that now, and we'll talk some more in the future.